Hey guys, it's MMA Vulture coming at you live with UFC Vegas 101, Dern Vs Ribas 2, weigh-in recap, as well as my final predictions for this week's card. And let's go ahead and jump right into it with the first bout of the night being Joe Solecki versus Nurullo Aliev. And in this one, I am sticking with my pick, and I am going with Nurullo Aliev to beat Joe Solecki for a couple of reasons. First off, if you guys remember my previous video, Joe Solecki is taking this fight on short notice and didn't have a full camp, so that is something to note. Not only that, in his previous fights against Grant Dawson, he got absolutely dominated on the ground. Absolutely dominated. And then in his fight against Drakkar Klose, he got tossed viciously on his head and dominated in the grappling department. So again, somebody who doesn't really have the best grappling skills going up against somebody who is known as a Khabib-alike, in the sense of he looks like Khabib, he fights like Khabib, he has phenomenal grappling skills. So that is why I am going with Nurullo to beat Joe Solecki. I think he has a clear-cut grappling advantage. Not only that, in terms of striking, I think his head movement is better. He's quicker, he's more explosive. I think that striking-wise, he can do just as much damage, if not more damage, than Joe Solecki on the feet and fare well in the striking department. So I got to go with Nurullo. He also has a height and reach advantage. So I think that with the height and reach advantage, along with the grappling advantage, I think he beats Joe Solecki, and I think he does it in dominant fashion. So give me Nurullo to beat Joe Solecki. And let's look at them on the scales here, in which we have Joe Solecki here first, who looks good. He looks good on the scales. He came in on weight. He looks healthy. He looks lean. He had a great camp. And you can see the tattoos. He's got some sick tattoos, to be completely honest, with his children's footprint on his shoulder, the pirate ship, all that. And let's go ahead and move along to Nurullo Aliev, who looks exactly like Khabib. Who am I looking at right now? I feel like I'm looking right at the younger version of Khabib. He looks good, though. He made weight. He looks lean. This is going to be a absolutely phenomenal performance, I hope, from Nurullo Aliev. And let's look at the face-off here between these two, in which you could see Nurullo Aliev, they're both pretty much the same height. Aliev looks a little bit thicker. He looks a lot more leaner, I would say. This is going to be a great, great fight. And let's look at the odds here, in which Nurullo Aliev sitting at a negative 700, whereas Joe Solecki sitting at a plus 500. I know the odds aren't very great for Nurullo Aliev, but to be completely honest, I see him winning this 100%. I don't see any way of Joe Solecki beating Nurullo Aliev. He's gotten dominated both times against Grant Dawson and Drakkar in the grappling department. Now he's going up against somebody who is even better in the grappling department in Nurullo Aliev. And in the striking department, I think that he's quicker, more explosive, and I think that he's going to be able to enter and exit the pocket against Joe Solecki with ease. So give me Nurullo to beat Joe Solecki, and even at the negative 700, I would add him into a parlay. I think that he's very live to easily beat Joe Solecki. And the over 1.5 sitting at a negative 700, over 2.5 sitting at a negative 325 to negative 375. I like the over. I think this hits the cards. I think that it's Nurullo Aliev getting the decision win over Joe Solecki. And let's go ahead and run it to the next fight on this card in Victoria Dudakova versus Fatima Kline. And in this one, I am sticking with my pick again in Fatima Kline. I think that she's going to beat Victoria Dudakova. And the reason why I think that she's going to beat Victoria Dudakova is because Dudakova tends to kind of lack in the cardio aspect of the fight, in the sense that she starts to slow down in the second and third round, and you can see it noticeably. She starts getting gassed and starts looking a hell of a lot slower. So I think that as this fight goes on, it's going to favor Fatima Kline. Not only that, Fatima is going to want to take this to the ground, and I believe if she can take Victoria Dudakova down, Dudakova has trouble getting back up to her feet. Not only that, Fatima's going to absolutely wear and tear on that tank of hers and that energy of Dudakova. And when she gets up after it, she's going to be completely gassed, completely slower, and you're going to notice it. So I am going with Fatima Kline. I think that takedowns are definitely a must here for her, and I think that she's going to get them. I think she's going to garner that control time. I think she's going to maintain control of Victoria Dudakova on the ground, pepper her with shots, and beat her. So give me Fatima Kline over Victoria Dudakova. And let's look at the weigh-in photos of these two here, in which we have Dudakova here first, looking jacked, looking healthy. She made weight, and she looked good doing so. And let's move right along to Fatima Kline with her very interesting haircut. But she looks good. She made weight. No weight misses here on this fight right here. I gotta say, Fatima Kline looks phenomenal here. And let's look at the face-offs between these two, in which you can see very intense face-off. I am definitely going with Fatima Kline. I think she's going to beat Victoria Dudakova, and I think that this is going to be a banger fight, to be completely honest. I think this is going to be a tit-for-tat banger fight. And let's go ahead and look at the odds here, in which is absolutely insane. Negative 1,000 for Fatima Kline. Victoria Dudakova at plus 700. This is absolutely ridiculous. To have Fatima Kline at negative 1,000 is insane to me. It's mind-boggling to me. I would never throw her into a parlay or anything. I just can't see myself betting on a negative 1,000 fighter who doesn't really have that much experience in the UFC, to be completely honest. You have two relatively unproven chicks, and one of them is a negative 1,000 and one of them's a plus 700. This is insane to me. The odds are absolutely ridiculous, way too wide. Fatima Kline should be like a negative 2, maybe negative 300, but she should not be a negative 1,000. I would not touch this fight, to be completely honest with you. I am going with Fatima Kline. I think that her clear-cut grappling edge over Victoria Dudakova is definitely going to show, and I think that she's going to be able to take her down, maintain control of her, garner that control time, and beat her in decision. Fatima Kline is my pick. Obviously, the odds are absolutely atrocious, so I would stick away from them. The over, I do believe, is going to hit. Over 1.5 sitting at a negative 550. Over 2.5 sitting at a negative 245 to negative 310. Very wide in that aspect. But I think that the over is going to hit, and I think it's Fatima Kline getting the win over Victoria Dudakova. And let's go ahead and move right along to the next fight on this card in Magomed Gadzhiyasulov versus Bruno Lopes. And I am going with Magomed Gadzhiyasulov over Bruno Lopes. I think, again, Magomed has a clear-cut grappling advantage over Bruno Lopes. Not only that, in terms of striking, I feel like Bruno Lopes kind of gets a little bit overzealous and throws some looping and wild shots at times, whereas Magomed is a lot more technical, a lot more patient, a lot more calculated. So I think that Magomed could find a knockout here, to be completely honest. If Bruno Lopes gets a little bit overzealous and leaves his chin wide open, I see Magomed catching him and possibly knocking him out. I get Magomed is not known for knockouts, but I see this fight as a possible knockout for Magomed. So just keep that in mind. I think that Magomed keeps his distance. I think that he's going to be able to outstrike Bruno Lopes, find some nice counter-striking shots on Bruno Lopes, and I'm going with Magomed Gadzhiyasulov to beat Bruno Lopes. If he has any trouble in the striking department, he will throw it back to the grappling, that I believe he has a clear-cut grappling advantage over Bruno Lopes. And let's look at the weigh-in photos here, in which we have Bruno Lopes here first, and he looks good on the scales. I mean, he looks healthy. He made weight. And then let's throw it to Magomed, who looks exactly like Magomed Ankalaev. Insane to me. He looks jacked. He looks healthy. I mean, he made weight easy. I think that we could possibly see him get a knockout over Bruno Lopes, to be completely honest. I really do see it happening. And let's look at the face-off here. You got Cowboy versus, the Mountain Man. So let's go ahead and look at the fight odds here, in which Magomed Gadzhiyasulov sitting at a negative 260, and then Bruno Lopes sitting at a plus 220. I'm going with Magomed Gadzhiyasulov. I think that he beats Bruno Lopes. I think he outstrikes him. I think he even out-grapples him, to be completely honest. Like I said, clear-cut grappling advantage. In terms of striking, I think that he's way more precise, way more patient and calculated than Bruno Lopes. And Bruno Lopes gets overzealous and leaves himself open to counter-striking, which Magomed has very, very crisp and clean counter-striking abilities. So I'm going with Magomed. I think that he beats Bruno Lopes, and I'm going to say by decision, but I do think that he can knock out Bruno Lopes as this fight goes on and as Bruno Lopes gets a little bit more tired and overzealous in his striking. And let's go ahead and run it up to the next fight on this card in what is a chick fight. And I am absolutely excited for this one, to be completely honest. We have Ernesta versus Nicolle Caliari, and I am sticking with Nicolle Caliari on this one. She has a clear-cut grappling advantage. She looked phenomenal in her weigh-in photos, which we will get to in a minute. She looked phenomenal in her weigh-in photos. I think Nicolle Caliari is going to take this down to the ground, where she ultimately has the advantage. She's a lot quicker in transition. She's very good at maintaining control of you when she gets you down. And I see her taking Ernesta down to the ground. And Ernesta doesn't have the best grappling defense, to be completely honest. She kind of struggles at defending takedowns. Not only that, she struggles at getting up after being taken down. So I think if Caliari can get this down to the ground, I think she's going to easily win this, and I see that happening. I think Caliari is definitely going to be able to take Ernesta down to the ground. She mixes in her takedowns with her striking very, very well. She sometimes does get a little bit overzealous and throws some looping shots, but I think that is going to be actually really good here against somebody who is very, very technical. So in throwing her wild shots, she can go for a takedown, mix it in with it, and find success in those single and double leg takedowns. So I got to go with Nicolle Caliari. I think she's going to beat Ernesta. Something I do want to mention here before we get to the weigh-in photos, you guys can see here, 5'9" to 5'3" in height, 6-inch height advantage. And let's go ahead and look at the weigh-in photos here. There's a reason I brought that up. And as you guys can see, we got Nicolle Caliari here on the scales first. She looks absolutely jacked. She looks fit. She looks lean. She looks in fantastic shape for this fight against Ernesta Kareckaite. And let's go ahead and look at Ernesta, who actually had troubles on the scales. They actually had to bring out the cover for her, and she struggled to make weight. It was a hard camp for her, so I think that's even better for Nicolle Caliari, to be completely honest. You have somebody who is drained, didn't have the best camp. So we're going to see how that affects her in the fight this Saturday. And let's look at the face-off between these two, in which you can see Caliari, this is not a 6-inch height difference, to be completely honest with you. 5'9" to 5'3", this is not a 5'9" to 5'3" height difference. The height is completely wrong, so that is something that you should definitely note. Reach could even be slightly wrong, so that is something also to know. I think that Nicolle Caliari has a clear-cut grappling advantage. I think that height-wise, fairly close compared to what they say. I think that there's a lot of advantages for Caliari in this, especially the fact that it was a rough camp for Ernesta. And let's look at the odds here between these two, in which Ernesta is sitting at a -260, Caliari sitting at a +220. I'm kind of surprised that money hasn't really came in too much on Caliari after Ernesta had that rough weight make. So we have Caliari sitting at a +220, like I said. Ernesta sitting at a -260. I think Caliari is going to beat Ernesta. I could even see Caliari getting a submission as this fight goes on if Ernesta starts to drain, starts to tire out due to the fact of the hard weight cut. So I'm going to go with Nicolle Caliari. I think over is live for the over 1.5. But like I said, I will caution because I do think Caliari is live to get a submission over Ernesta as this fight goes on, as she gets tired, as she starts to slow down, become more dull in the later rounds. So give me Caliari to beat Ernesta via decision. And let's go ahead and run it up to the next fight on this card in Preston Parsons versus Jacobe Smith. And I am sticking with Jacobe Smith on this one. He is a up-and-coming prospect with legit knockout power, insane grappling skills. He's a very well-rounded fighter, and I think that this is a perfect fight for him against Preston Parsons, who is kind of wishy-washy and just hasn't been looking the best as of lately. You have Preston Parsons, who lost to Oban Elliott. Oban Elliott is an absolute dog, so no bad blood on that one. Then you have the win against Matthew Semselberger, who is absolutely mediocre and currently out of the UFC. The loss to Trevin Giles, which was a back-and-forth, very close tit-for-tat fight. The win over Evan Elder, who mediocre again. I think that this is a perfect fight for Jacobe Smith. I think that in terms of grappling, he's going to have the grappling advantage. I think in terms of striking, he's even going to have the striking advantage. He's more explosive. He's quicker. He's got quicker, cleaner combinations. He's a lot better in terms of mixing up his shots to the head and to the body over Preston Parsons. I get that Preston Parsons is no bum, no slouch. Like, he's a pretty decent, well-rounded fighter, but I just think that he's going up against somebody who is just up and coming and just a lot better in every aspect. Jacobe Smith is a dog. He is a dog. And I will say that he had a phenomenal knockout and ground and pound over Christian Savoy, which he looked phenomenal in. And I think that we could see something similar in the sense of him ground and pounding Preston Parsons, to be completely honest. I think that we could see Jacobe land a brutal shot on Preston Parsons, start following it up with some ground and pound and ending it via technical knockout. That is my call for Jacobe Smith. And let's go ahead and look at the weigh-in photos here real quick between these two. You have Jacobe Smith, who looks absolutely jacked, lean, looks incredible for this fight. And then we have Preston Parsons, same thing. He looks jacked and lean too. He looks phenomenal for this fight. He's got the sick tattoos to go along with it, with the cheetah on his rib cage. And let's look at the face-off between these two, in which you can see close in height. I think that Jacobe Smith looks a little bit thicker versus Preston Parsons, who looks a little bit thinner. I think this is going to be a phenomenal matchup between these two. And let's look at the odds real quick between these two, in which Preston Parsons sitting at a plus 475, Jacobe Smith sitting at a negative 650. Now, in terms of the odds on this fight, I do like Jacobe Smith to win, but the odds are fairly wide, to be completely honest. Jacobe Smith, yes, is a phenomenal up-and-coming prospect with phenomenal skills in terms of striking and grappling, but to be a negative 650 is very, very wide, to be completely honest. I see him around I'd say negative 300, give or take. I would say Jacobe Smith is around a negative 300, maybe negative 350, but I don't see him being a negative 650, seeing as, I mean, he's relatively unproven, to be completely honest. I mean, he had the knockout in Contender Series, but that's about it. That's all we've seen so far, so it's going to be interesting to see how he fares. I still think Jacobe Smith has what it takes and will beat Preston Parsons, and I think that he could get it done via technical knockout, and that is my official pick. And let's run it up to the next fight on this card in Thiago Moises versus Trey Ogden. And I love this fight. This is going to be an absolute banger fight in which I am sticking with Trey Ogden. I am going with the underdog in this one. We have two really well-rounded fighters, to be completely honest, on both sides. Thiago Moises has really good jiu-jitsu and pretty decent striking and grappling, but I think that Trey Ogden is a little bit slicker in terms of striking. I think he's a little bit more accurate, more precise with his striking. Not only that, he's really good at entering and exiting the pocket very quickly. He also has grappling to throw it back on. I will say the jiu-jitsu of Thiago Moises is better, but I still think that Trey Ogden can hold his own very well in the grappling department against Thiago Moises, and that's why I'm picking him. I think in terms of striking, he's going to outstrike Thiago Moises. I think in terms of grappling, we could see moments from Trey Ogden of out-grappling and outworking Thiago Moises. I really do see that happening. That is why I'm picking him. I think that he's going to outwork him. I think he's going to put on a pace that Thiago Moises isn't going to be able to keep up with. And that is why I'm going with Trey Ogden. He has also looked very, very well as of lately, especially against Loic. He looked phenomenal. Against Kurt Halabat, looked phenomenal. So I got to go with Trey Ogden. And let's go ahead and look at the weigh-in photos here between these two, in which we got Trey Ogden here first, looking jacked. He made weight, looks healthy on the scales. He looks in great shape going into this fight against Thiago Moises. I'm going to be completely honest. And let's look at Thiago. Where's Thiago? Thiago's not even here. Just kidding. Thiago's right here. He looks good. He looks even better, to be completely honest. He looks in phenomenal shape. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. He looks in phenomenal shape. He looks lean. He looks jacked. He looks great. And let's look at the face-offs between these two, in which you can see Trey Ogden is a little bit taller than Thiago Moises. Yes, Thiago Moises does look a little bit thicker, looks a little bit fuller in terms of muscularity, but I think that it's going to be Trey Ogden getting the better of Thiago Moises in terms of striking, and I even see in grappling moments Trey Ogden having the better of Thiago Moises. And let's go ahead and look at the odds on this fight, in which Trey Ogden sitting at a plus 150, just kidding, plus 146, Thiago Moises sitting at a negative 171. I think the odds are relatively right, to be completely honest. I think that Trey Ogden is a great underdog. I think that he's going to beat Thiago Moises. I think that he has a striking advantage. I think that in terms of grappling, it's going to be fairly close, but I still think that he's going to have moments and garner some control time over Thiago Moises. Give me Trey Ogden to beat Thiago Moises, over 1.5, sitting at a negative 500, over 2.5, sitting at a negative 280 to negative 300. I think this fight goes over. I think this hits the cards, and I think it's Trey Ogden walking away with the underdog win. And let's go ahead and run it to the next fight, in which is a banger fight in Marco Tulio versus Ihor Potieria. And I am sticking with my guns in Marco Tulio. Though he is relatively unproven, he has insane knockout power. He is relatively good in terms of his footwork. He has quick, stiff jab. He mixes up his shots fairly well. I got to go with Marco Tulio. On the other side, we have Potieria, who hasn't been the best in the UFC. As soon as he got to the UFC, he's not really been able to progress and get better as these fights go on. As you guys can see, lost to Cesar Almeida, lost to Michel Pieta before that. Obviously, two good fighters. Robert Razak, he took the win in that one. Lost to Bellato, lost to Carlos Olberg. He is getting really good fighters, and that is why he's losing. But to be completely honest, he's getting another good fighter. They are just feeding him to the wolves, if you will. He is getting dominant fighter after dominant fighter, and I think Marco Tulio is another dominant fighter who is going to come out there and KO Ihor Potieria, to be completely honest. We know his chin isn't really there. He kind of lacks in terms of striking. He kind of gasses out as well, as we saw in the Cesar Almeida fight. So I'm going to go with Marco Tulio, who likes to blitz, likes to be in your face, kind of put that pressure on you, and really just slang and bang. I am going with Marco Tulio. I think he knocks out Ihor Potieria, and I think it's in devastating fashion. And let's go ahead and look at the weigh-in photos here, in which we have Marco Tulio first, who looks good. He came in, he made weight, he looked phenomenal. He's got the sick lion tattoo. He looks like he's a fan of Lion King, as you guys can see over here. He's got the Mufasa on the rock. And let's go ahead and throw it to Ihor Potieria, who actually missed weight. He came in at 188.5 versus 186 or 185, I believe, for Tulio. He missed weight. And you could tell, you could see it on his face. It was definitely a rough camp, rough cut. He's got the sick tattoo on his chest. But again, rough cut. And let's look at the face-off here. As you guys can see, the intense face-off. You got Tulio with the face paint. He looks good. He looks healthy. He looks thick. Whereas you have Potieria, who looks very thin. Looks like he's feeling it. And then let's look at the odds between these two, in which Potieria sitting... Oops, clicked the wrong one. Potieria sitting at a plus 350. Marco Tulio sitting at a negative 450. And I gotta go with Tulio. Listen, I did say that Potieria could possibly knock out Tulio in the later rounds, seeing as Tulio could possibly get a little bit gassed out. But seeing how Potieria came into this weigh-in, I think it's Tulio that's going to absolutely obliterate and run through Potieria. I'm going to be completely honest. I think that Tulio is going to sleep Potieria, and I think that it's going to be viciously. Over 1.5 sitting at a negative 139. Under 1.5 sitting at a plus 109. Over 2.5 sitting at a plus 190. I think that this goes under 2.5 is my call at negative 260. I think that's a great call. I think it's Marco Tulio blitzing, closing that distance against Iho Potieria and landing that devastating shot to knock out Potieria. And the knockout is sitting right around a negative 180 to negative 140. So give me Marco Tulio to knock out Ihor Potieria. And let's go ahead and run it up to the next fight on this card in Jose Johnson versus Felipe Boons. And I am going with Jose Johnson on this one over Felipe Boons. Though there was some rough weights, I will say, but we'll leave that till after. But Jose Johnson, I am sticking with him. I think that he's going to maintain the distance against Felipe Boons. Strike from, kind of use that long jab of his to keep Felipe Boons at bay. I think he mixes it up really well to the head and to the body. I think that he's also a solid grappler, which is where he might want to take this down to against Felipe Boons. And not only that, he's got quicker transitions, stronger takedowns over Felipe Boons. He's got the height advantage and reach advantage over Felipe Boons. I got to go with Jose Johnson, to be completely honest. You have two relatively mediocre fighters, to be completely honest, on both sides, in which I am going with Jose Johnson over Felipe Boons. I think that Boons kind of lacks in the grappling department. Yes, he's a pretty good striker, but I think that Jose Johnson is just as good as a striker. In terms of grappling, I think he's a better grappler. I'm going with Jose Johnson over Felipe Boons. And let's look at the weigh-in photos here, in which we have Felipe Boons first. As you guys can see, he looks jacked. He looks healthy. He's got that face, like that smoldering face, you know. He looks good. And then we got Jose Johnson, who actually missed weight. Came in over. He looks a little thin. He still looks healthy. But, again, rough camp for him. I am still picking him, but just keep in mind it was a rough cut for him. And let's look at the face-offs here. As you guys can see, it got really intense. Jose Johnson was getting up in Felipe Boons' face. He was making it close and personal. That was for sure. And let's go ahead and look at the odds here on this fight, in which we have Jose Johnson sitting at a negative 154, Felipe Boons sitting at a plus 134. I think it's Jose Johnson getting the better of Felipe Boons. I think in terms of striking, it's fairly close. I think that in terms of grappling, it's Jose Johnson getting the better of him. And I think this is going to be a very tit-for-tat, back-and-forth fight, to be completely honest. This is definitely one of those fights I see going either way. I am picking Jose Johnson, obviously, but again, I see this going either way. I think it's going to be a tit-for-tat, close fight. Over 1.5 sitting at a negative 275. Over 2.5 sitting at a negative 150. I think this fight goes over. I think it hits the cards, and I think it's Jose Johnson getting the better of Felipe Boons. And let's go ahead and get to the next banger on this card in Punhalil Soriano versus Uros Medic. And I am sticking with Uros Medic over Punahil Soriano. And I did go back and forth on this one because I do see a way for Soriano to win. But I am going with Medic. I think that in terms of striking, I think it's going to be fairly close and fairly interesting. But I think it's Medic getting the better of him because of the fact of how technical he is. He's a very calm, patient striker. He likes to sit back, wait. Also, he's got some really good striking, counter-striking abilities. He's got knockout power. I think that Medic could find himself counter-striking Soriano, because Soriano, though has decent striking and sometimes looks good in the striking aspect, does get a little overzealous, throws looping hooks, leaving himself wide open for counter-strikings. And that's where I think Medic could definitely take advantage and beat Ponzinibbio Soriano. I think that in terms of grappling, that's where Soriano has the better over Medic. So I do think that Medic is going to want to stay up. Medic has very good takedown defense. That is something to note. So I do think that he keeps this on the feet, and I think he outstrikes Soriano. I think he outstrikes him. He's got the height and striking advantage. So give me Yoros Medic over Soriano. And let's look at the weigh-in photos here on these two, in which we have Medic first. He looks phenomenal. Looks in great shape for this bout against Soriano. He looks lean. He looks healthy. He's got the veins popping out. He looks phenomenal. And let's run it to Ponzinibbio Soriano, who's making this crazy, crazy face. What the hell is this? What is he doing? He looks jacked, though. Nonetheless, he looks absolutely sick. He looks in insane shape. So this is going to be a banger between these two. And let's look at the face-off here, in which you could see Medic is definitely a little bit taller. Soriano looks a little bit thicker, a little bit bigger. But I think that it's still going to be Medic with the striking advantage. Not only that, the height advantage. I think that he even is going to be stronger than Soriano. I get that the looks are different, but I still think that Medic is going to be stronger. And let's look at the odds here between these two, in which Medic sitting at a -220. Soriano sitting at a +185. I like Medic. I really do. I think the odds are great. I think Medic could definitely beat Soriano. Over 1.5 sitting at a -160. Over 2.5 sitting at a +130. I think it's Medic beating Soriano. And I actually think that this could go over, to be completely honest. I'm going to go Medic. And I'm going to say over 1.5 is the call as well. I think that this possibly could hit the cards, to be completely honest. And I think it's Medic getting the better of Soriano in a very tough, close back and forth battle. And let's go ahead and run it up to the main card opener in Austin Bashi versus Christian Rodriguez. And this is an absolute banger fight. I am sticking with Austin Bashi over Christian Rodriguez. Yes, Christian Rodriguez has taken multiple people's O's, but this is somebody who is a lot better of a prospect. I think he's better than Isaac Dulgarian. I think he's better than Cameron Simon. I think he's better than even Raul Rojas in terms of grappling. So I am picking Austin Bashi. I think that he has a clear-cut grappling advantage. I think even striking, he low-key has a striking advantage because he's quicker in the pocket. He's got really clean combinations to the head and to the body. I think that Austin Bashi is going to be able to enter and exit the pocket with ease. I think that he's going to be able to also mix in his takedowns with his striking and find success. So I am going with Austin Bashi over Christian Rodriguez. But Christian Rodriguez is no bum, no slouch. I just think Austin Bashi is got that X factor that he doesn't. And let's go ahead and look at the weigh-in photos. As we see here, we got Austin Bashi, who looks absolutely killer. He looks jacked, phenomenal. He looks lean. This guy is in fantastic shape for this fight against Christian Rodriguez. And let's look at the Christian Rodriguez here. He looks a little bit, honestly, he looks a little bit dull, to be completely honest. He doesn't look as filled out. He doesn't look as lean, as built, but he still gets it done. Let's go ahead and look at the face-off between these two, which you could see very, very intense face-off. I think this is going to be a killer fight. I'm going to be completely honest. This is going to be an insane fight. Maybe even fight of the night. And let's go ahead and look at the odds on this fight, in which we have Austin Bashi sitting at a -270, Christian Rodriguez sitting at a +230. I like Austin Bashi. Great odds at -270. This guy literally didn't even want to. He got offered to come into the Contender Series, said no, I'm not coming in. Ended up going back, fighting more people, older people as well, and getting more experience, and then coming back and winning. That is who Austin Bashi is. He didn't want to take, I have this chance right away, I'm going to take it right now. No, he waited his turn. He waited his time. He advanced his skills, advanced his grappling and striking, and he came back even better, and this is going to be a phenomenal matchup for him to see how well he has improved. I am going with Austin Bashi over Christian Rodriguez. And the over 1.5 sitting at a -435, over 2.5 sitting at a -240. I like the over in this fight. I think it's Austin Bashi getting the better of Christian Rodriguez. I could see a world where he gets a submission on Christian Rodriguez, but I'm going to pick the most likely outcome. I think it's going to be decision win for Austin Bashi over Christian Rodriguez. And let's run it to the next fight, which also could be fight of the night in Chris Curtis versus Roman Kopylov. This is a banger fight again. We have back-to-back banger fights. Austin Bashi and Christian Rodriguez, banger. Chris Curtis and Roman Kopylov, banger. This is going to be maybe even fight of the night as well. I am sticking to my guns, sticking with Roman Kopylov. I think that Roman Kopylov could definitely beat Chris Curtis. I think that, yes, Chris Curtis is a powerhouse. He has that one-punch knockout power, but so does Kopylov. And Kopylov is a lot more technical of a fighter. He also has a huge height advantage and reach advantage. I think that Kopylov is going to maintain that distance, pepper Chris Curtis from the outside with his striking, keep Chris Curtis at bay. I think that Kopylov has a clear-cut route to a win with his kicks also, being able to use his kicks from the outside, strike from the outside, use his height and reach advantage to the best of his abilities. I gotta go with Kopylov. And if he has any trouble with the striking of Chris Curtis, he throws it to the grappling. He has phenomenal grappling with strong takedowns, maintains control of you when he gets you down. I gotta stick with Roman Kopylov. In every aspect of the fight game, he is really good. He's a very well-rounded fighter. And it's no knock to Chris Curtis because he's a well-rounded fighter too. I just believe that Roman Kopylov is going to be too much for him. This is a fight where I just think that, again, Kopylov is going to be way too much for Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis is injury prone. He's coming off of multiple injuries. Yes, he's coming to win. He even said it. For his mental health, he cannot lose. So that is something that you definitely want to note. And let's go ahead and look at the weigh-in photos here, in which we have Roman Kopylov here first. And he looks good. He looks phenomenal on the scales. He looks jacked. He looks lean. He made weight. This is going to be a phenomenal fight between him and Chris Curtis. And then we got Chris Curtis, who always does the same move. You know, the famous Chris Curtis pose. And he looks jacked too. I mean, when does Chris Curtis not look jacked? He looks phenomenal. He's always in great shape. He's always coming to duke it out. This is going to be an absolute banger. And let's look at the face-off. And look at the height advantage for Roman Kopylov. This is absolutely insane. He has a huge height advantage over Chris Curtis. I think this could be Roman Kopylov getting a knockout over Chris Curtis. And I know Chris Curtis is tough and durable as nails. But look at the height difference. You got somebody who is a lot more technical of a fighter, who's a lot more precise. Then you have somebody who is lethal with a deadly one-punch knockout power, but sometimes gets a little bit overzealous. And you can't do that against somebody like Kopylov, who is very, very technical. And let's throw it to the fight odds real quick. As we see here, we have Chris Curtis at a +180, Roman Kopylov at a -210. I'm sticking with Roman Kopylov over Chris Curtis. Over 1.5 sitting at a -435. Over 2.5 sitting at a -210. On this one for the rounds, I'm going to stick away from, because I do see a world where Kopylov could knock out Chris Curtis. Though Chris Curtis is tough and durable as nails, like I said, I think Kopylov could break him down and in the later rounds land that knockout shot. Give me Kopylov by knockout over Chris Curtis. I think that he can get it done here. Kopylov sitting at a +300 for a knockout. I think that he's live to knock out Chris Curtis. I think as this fight goes on, it's going to favor Kopylov. I think that Chris Curtis is going to start slowing down, and Kopylov's going to win it via knockout. And let's run it up to the next fight on this main card in Abdul Razak Alhassan versus Cesar Almeida. And I am going with Cesar Almeida over Abdul Razak Alhassan. And the reason being because Alhassan is, yes, a powerhouse, but he sucks at putting himself in positions to use it to the best of his abilities. He throws looping shots at times. He kind of gets wild and chaotic. He likes to brawl. I just don't see that working against Cesar Almeida, who is very, very technical. He's a really solid kickboxer, and I think that that's going to do him wonders here against Alhassan, who likes to blitz and get overzealous and leave himself open to getting clipped, and I think that Cesar Almeida could clip him. I think that Cesar Almeida is a very good counter striker. I think that he could catch Alhassan as he's throwing these looping shots. Not only that, I see him being able to enter and exit the pocket with ease because I think he's quicker than Alhassan, though it will be close in terms of speed. Explosiveness, I'm going to say they both have the explosiveness, though Alhassan is a little bit more explosive. I think that Cesar Almeida is better at closing the distance. He's more accurate in terms of striking. He's got leg kicks to throw as well to mix it up to the head and to the body. And that is why I'm going with Cesar Almeida over Abdul Razak Alhassan. Not only that, I think in terms of grappling, I think Almeida might be able to beat Alhassan in terms of grappling. I think he'll be able to out-grapple him. Let's go ahead and throw it to the weigh-in photos here now. And we got Cesar Almeida here first. Looks phenomenal. He looks jacked. He looks healthy. He looks good. And then let's throw it to Abdul Razak Alhassan, who looks phenomenal. He looks absolutely jacked, yoked. He looks in incredible shape here. And let's go ahead and look at the face-offs between these two, in which you could see Cesar Almeida is a little bit taller. I think Alhassan is a little bit thicker, a little bit more filled out. I think that in terms of striking, I think that it's going to be fairly close, though I think that Cesar Almeida is going to get the better. I think he's more precise, more accurate, and more patient, and doesn't always throw these chaotic, wild looping shots like Alhassan does. And let's go ahead and throw it to the fight odds for this fight, in which we have Abdul Razak Alhassan at a plus 214, Cesar Almeida at a negative 254. I'm going with Cesar Almeida over 1.5 sitting at a negative 160, over 2.5 sitting at a plus 125. I think Cesar Almeida outstrikes and knocks out Alhassan, to be completely honest. I think that he picks him apart, and I see him landing that knockout shot, to be completely honest. But I also could see this going to the cards. I'm going to go with Cesar Almeida via decision, though I will say I do see a route for Almeida to get a knockout win over Alhassan, seeing as Alhassan gets a little bit chaotic and throws looping shots, and somebody like Cesar Almeida could counter-strike and land that brutal knockout shot. So give me Cesar Almeida over Abdul Razak Alhassan, and I think it goes to decision. And let's run it to the co-main event of the evening in Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Carlston Harris. And I am sticking with my guns in Santiago Ponzinibbio over Carlston Harris. I think that Santiago Ponzinibbio is the better striker, though Carlston Harris has the reach advantage. I still think that Santiago Ponzinibbio will be able to outstrike him, be able to mix up his shots really well. He's got the long, stiff jab to kind of keep Carlston Harris away. Not only that, he's got long legs for low and high kicks. He's a decent grappler, whereas I think that Carlston Harris kind of lacks in the grappling department. He's got all right takedown defense. He's chinny, like I said. He's a decent striker that looks awkward and clunky on the feet. I mean, in every aspect, he kind of has holes in his game. He's awkward and clunky in the striking. In terms of grappling, he's very slow. He's very, what's the word? He's very awkward in terms of grappling as well, is what I'm trying to say. So that is why I'm going with Santiago Ponzinibbio. I think that he beats Carlston Harris. I do think that this is going to be a very close fight, a very back and forth fight, to be completely honest. I think it's fairly close in terms of skills on both sides, though I still think Ponzinibbio is a little bit better and will get the win. And let's go ahead and look at the weigh-in photos here, in which we got Carlston Harris first. And he looks good. I mean, he made weight. He looks healthy. He's smiling. He's ready for war against Santiago Ponzinibbio. And let's look at Santiago Ponzinibbio. And look at his face. He's making a mean move. I don't know what he's doing. He looks like he's about to like he's about to shit himself or something. I don't know what he's got going on. He's got these sick tattoos. He looks jacked. He looks good. He looks healthy. He looks in great shape for this fight against Harris. And let's look at the weigh-in or the face-off photos here, in which you could see Carlston Harris is definitely taller, as you guys can tell. But in terms of size, I think Ponzinibbio is thicker. I think Harris is a little bit thinner. And I think that Ponzinibbio will be able to close the distance on Carlston Harris and get the better of him in terms of striking and grappling. And let's look at the odds here between these two. Santiago Ponzinibbio sitting at a -136. Carlston Harris sitting at a +116. Give me Santiago Ponzinibbio to beat Carlston Harris. Over 1.5 sitting at a -185. Over 2.5 sitting at a +120. I think that this fight could hit the cards. And I think it's Ponzinibbio getting the better of Harris. I'm going to say Ponzinibbio via decision over Carlston Harris. A very tit-for-tat, back-and-forth fight in which Santiago Ponzinibbio gets the close decision over Carlston Harris. And let's go ahead and throw it to the main event. And if you guys haven't, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button. And let's throw it to the main event in Mackenzie Dern versus Amanda Ribas. And I am sticking with Amanda Ribas. I think in terms of striking, she has a clear-cut striking advantage. I think in terms of grappling, yes, Mackenzie Dern is better at jiu-jitsu. But I think in terms of grappling, I think that she could still fare well in moments against Mackenzie Dern. I really do. I think that she could shine. I think that she could take down Mackenzie Dern herself. I think that she could garner control time and beat Mackenzie Dern. I think that everywhere this fight goes, Amanda Ribas could definitely beat Mackenzie Dern. Striking-wise, I think she has a clear-cut striking advantage. She's quicker. She's more slick on the feet. She's got the quicker, cleaner combinations over Mackenzie Dern. I think in terms of grappling, she's got faster transitions. I think she also is very good with her takedown defense. And I think that it's going to be hard for Mackenzie Dern to get her down to the ground. So give me Amanda Ribas over Mackenzie Dern. And let's go ahead and look at the weigh-in photos here, in which we have Amanda Ribas first. She looks good. She's smiling. She's throwing up that one that she always does. She looks good. And then let's throw it to Mackenzie Dern, who looks phenomenal on the scales like always. She looks good, smiling, throwing up the one just like Amanda Ribas. They're both shooting for that #1 spot. They both want to fight for that belt. And let's go ahead and look at the face-off between these two. Very intense, close face-off. Up close and personal between these two. These two are trying to get rid of each other, man. They want that title shot. They are coming for blood. And let's go ahead and look at the odds on this fight for the main event. Mackenzie Dern sitting at a +164. Amanda Ribas sitting at a -189. I like Amanda Ribas. Over 1.5, -800. Over 2.5, -425. Over 3.5, -285. Over 4.5, -210. I like the over in this fight. I think that Amanda Ribas is going to win this via decision. I think that Amanda Ribas is going to put on a dominant performance. I think that she's going to dominantly beat Mackenzie Dern. I think that every aspect of this fight, Amanda Ribas is better. Yes, Mackenzie Dern has better jiu-jitsu, but I still think Amanda Ribas can keep up with her and get the better of her. That is why I'm going with Amanda Ribas via decision. I like the overs. I personally like the over 3.5, the over 2.5. You could take the over 4.5. Obviously, take it with a grain of salt because it's over 4.5, very close to decision. But I think this definitely hits the cards, and I think it's Amanda Ribas getting the better of Mackenzie Dern. And if you guys haven't, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.